Like I said earlier, welcome everyone to the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance Summit of 2022. This session is focused upon DBSA's new sustainability model and how it can work. Our session at this moment is going to include some introductions, talking about the status quo and the happy ending. This session is going to talk about change, and it's hard for people to change. As adults, we don't like change. We don't want to hear we need to change, but sometimes it has to happen. But we're going to try to make it as painless as possible. Our panelists today include David Holter from DBSA Greater Seattle Support Group and Jean Duncan from DBSA Portland Eastside Chapter. Unfortunately, Larry Vanderpool could not make it today, and so we're going to just continue along. We're talking about the status quo and speaking truth to both staff and to peer leaders. We know that with our chapter network, something wasn't going quite right. And some of those things included chapter presidents that have been chapter presidents for year after year after year, unable to secure other volunteer leaders and to help or to want to take leadership positions. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what DBSA is about. DBSA's mission and values include that our motto rather is DBSA provides hope, help, support, and education to improve the lives of people who have mood disorders. DBSA's vision is that the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance envisions wellness for people with living with mood disorders, depression, and bipolar disorder. Part of what we were doing with when we were envisioning changing and the new network is we had to keep in mind DBSA's core beliefs. David, would you mind reading the first slide about DBSA's core beliefs and what we believe?
Sure. With the beliefs, the one is mood disorders, while life-threatening, are highly treatable, and people living with mood disorders can and do thrive. Number two, the lived experience of people should inform everything DBSA does. And three, DBSA recognizes several pathways to treatment, including peer support, personal wellness strategies, therapeutic and medical interventions. All individuals have the right to direct their own treatment.
Thank you, David. Jean, would you mind reading the next one for us?
Peer support is a powerful wellness tool and can be beneficial to both peers and their supporters. Having the peer perspective at the center of conversations about mental health results in better outcomes. Wellness encompasses an individual's whole life, and each person's wellness journey is unique, just like everyone is unique. DBSA provides support for all individuals living with or affected by mood disorders at all points in their wellness journey.
Clinicians should collaborate with peers to provide options when developing personalized treatment plans that target complete wellness, not merely improvement. Researchers should work to provide treatment options that target complete wellness, not merely improvement. All people should have access to quality mental health care. With that being said, the Council on Chapters and Support Groups and the Advisory Council, they started looking at our chapter network, keeping the core values and beliefs in mind, and really looking at what DBSA was providing. The first thing that the council worked upon was a definition of what does sustainable mean. And they came upon agreed upon that sustainability is the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level. Sustenance of DBSA's organizations has been challenged for various reasons, including lack of admin work at the local level. Look, when people joined our support groups, they never imagined that we were going to say, hey, by the way, you have to open up a separately incorporated nonprofit business. And by the way, you're going to have to take minutes. You're going to have to do financials. You're going to have to file for incorporation. And need I go on? So some of this work and some of these tasks really caused people to think twice about wanting to volunteer. So that caused unstable or none at all of succession planning. Who was going to be next? You know, sometimes, David, I don't know about you, but when people were asking who was going to be the president, were you standing on the line when everyone else took a step back?
I believe I was looking down at a paper at the moment, and
Yeah, okay, all right.
no, I'm very happy to help.
I know you are. There's also a high rate of volunteer burnout, whether it's a support group facilitator, a peer that's attending meetings, our chapter officers, our state org officers. That burnout happens unless people have a chance to get off the hot seat and be facilitated or to be led. And volunteer bandwidth, due to lived experience and the possibilities of going in and out of wellness, is very real. And we have to understand that. But if a chapter president goes out of wellness, we need to have someone be able to sit there and step up and help them. The council came up with an overall goal. We wanted to expand the number, enhance the strength, and stabilize sustainability of DBSA's support group network. To do this, we need to understand our audience and create a simplified, engaging, and sustainable structure for DBSA's network of organizations. If you look at the picture, I know Jean had said, Jill, what the heck is that? But that's a bridge over troubled waters. And that's what the council wanted to start to do, was strengthen that bridge. The first step was recognizing the problems, the symptoms. Insufficient succession planning and leadership recruitment and leadership burnout resulted in chapter leaders serving well beyond their term limits. And you're saying, Jill, term limits, what's that? That's what's defined in your chapter's bylaws. Insufficient number of support group facilitators. How does that manifest? You hear complaints about support group facilitators and from facilitators who said, hey, I need to have a chance to speak my truth too. We have a lack of support group and chapter admin participation, failure to submit reaffiliation paperwork on time or at all, or a year or two later. It's a sign that something isn't quite going right. With all of these symptoms, then we had COVID-19 occur, and that was kind of the ignition point. Now, we're going to talk about the happy ending, but I'm going to let both David and Jean talk a little bit more here as well. We're going to talk about how the freedom of dissolution is going to guarantee a little bit happier ending.
Yes.
David, before we start talking about shaking things up, can you talk a little bit about what your experience was as a chapter president? And some of the, you can share our story a little bit, because it's been for a couple years that we can talk about it.
Yes, thank you, Joel. I'd been helping run our chapter for 20 years at that point, and it was very hard for me as the other facilitators and officers retired. It was hard for me to accept the fact that the organization I worked really hard to get going was starting to collapse. And I realized I couldn't provide names for the officers. And so then that put our corporation status at risk. And I was very fortunate to have Sue here. She's in our group. Step up and help with facilitation, take the training, and that was a real gift when there wasn't a lot of other folks interested in helping. So it was
Can I
very hard
interrupt
to.
you? Can I
Sure.
interrupt you a second, David? Wait a
Mhm.
minute, you said Sue was facilitating. So that means that your support group sounds kind of vibrant there and that people are attending support group, right?
Oh, yes, yes. The support group never wavered. We tried to keep that going. Even I think I did a few meetings by myself, and then Sue came on board, and so it never skipped a beat.
Mhm. Now, David, we've been working together for a few years now. And with your permission, I'm just going to remind you of some things to help illustrate some of our points. Last year, you contacted me struggling with trying to find just the basic officers. And lo and behold, last year we discovered something about your chapter. Do you recall? And if you can't, that's okay. And I don't want to put you on that spot. But do you remember what I had to do for the chapter? Because we discovered that as officers came and left, that some of the paperwork didn't get done. Do you remember that? And we had to reincorporate the chapter.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So unfortunately, as officers came and left, they didn't submit the basic paperwork, which would renew, which is the annual report, which renews the chapter's incorporation. And they didn't submit the basic IRS information on the reaffiliation paperwork, which allows me, if your chapter is part of DBSA's group exemption, to file the 990N postcard with the IRS. And so last year, David and I worked and David scraped to find the necessary officers to put on the paperwork.
Yes.
Yeah, he smiles. And we scraped by that year with just the minimum 3 officers. Okay. Now, got it, the chapter we got the chapter incorporated again, got their EIN number established, filed their taxes, and then we got to 2021 renewal into 2022. And David and I had a really heartbreaking conversation, didn't we, in January?
Yes.
Remember, David? You want to talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes. You spoke the truth that if the group could no longer sustain under the chapter model, and that we'd have to resort back down to the support group model. And ultimately, that wasn't a bad thing. I mean, we were a support group before 2006, so it was like, it was just kind of an acceptance that I had to go through. And Bonnie Rosenthal was in the meeting. She was very helpful in talking to me about it, and it was just a point of mourning for a bit, but it turned out to be a really good thing.
Well, was it just mourning, or were you kind of, I mean, you had put a lot of time and work and effort. This was your baby, wasn't it?
Sure. Mhm.
And it kind of made you a little frustrated, a little irritated that why can't anyone else see what a great opportunity this is kind of
Oh.
that we're providing here?
Sure.
And can anyone step forward? And you know what, no matter what your pleas were, it was not to be. And I know that when we first talked about that maybe the chapter is no longer sustainable, it was a shock moment, right? It didn't feel
Yes.
very good. It didn't feel very good.
No,
Yeah.
it's just a point of loss
Yeah.
in several directions.
Yeah. And there's a lot of officers out there that feel that way. They started this, that's their baby, they've grown it, and and then for what? For it all to go to pot, right? And you're like, really? And it just really saddened me. So what had to happen was some major shakeup. And so what we started doing was we had 3 chapters from 2 different states completely dissolve their legal paperwork, their incorporation. And then we closed their EIN numbers by having a final financial report and then closing that off with the IRS. And then what we had to do for the positive is I started to get the groups together and talk to them about forming this new chapter. And everyone was kind of like, what? A new chapter? A chapter that involves 3 different states? Well, we won't tell them how many it is now, but 3 different states, how can that be? And so what we also had done was we got Jean Duncan involved from DBSA Portland Eastside Chapter. DBSA Portland Eastside Chapter is still a chapter. It is a strong chapter in Oregon, but it became, Jean, how would you phrase your involvement with the organization?
I think of it as DBSA Portland Eastside is partnering with the Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to put out a thanks to my board of directors that have allowed me, have picked up some of my responsibilities for our chapter so that I could be on loan to the new regional organization.
Yeah, we're very thankful.
And Jill, there was a question in the chat that would be good to answer, I think, before we go on, and that's
That'd be great, Jean.
What's the difference between a chapter model and the support group model?
Well, all right. A chapter is a legal organization that is recognized and has a separate incorporation through a local state government. Most of our chapters elect to be incorporated in Illinois, so that DBSA staff, me, is responsible for collecting the annual report every year, which renews the incorporation. And the chapter also has an employer identification number. The chapter is has a board of directors, which are the bosses of the organization. And the chapter is ultimately responsible for the support groups. The support groups, imagine them as the next level, like children. The chapter's board of directors is responsible for the support groups. The support groups follow the chapter's bylaws, policies, and procedures. The support group does not need to have a board of directors. It answers to the board of directors. It does not need to formulate its own policies. It has to go to the chapters. The support groups, their main goal is to provide support to DBSA or, new peers. Does that answer the question?
Good answer, Jill. Good answer.
I get paid to do that, I think. Sorry. All right. A new regional chapter includes this new one that we just created is the Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter. We're going to brag a little bit about our new creation. It encompasses 6 states: Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Huge territory, lots of road, lots of geography, but not a lot of people. Can you imagine trying to start a chapter in a mountainside town? Who could drive 45 minutes to an hour? And if you add bad weather or night, how likely is it that we're going to be able to have a chapter that can have a board of directors with a minimum of 7 people, which is 3 officers, 3 directors, and a substitute? How likely is that? Not very. It's hard to put together a sustainable chapter when you have those impediments. So with the new chapter and the blessings of Zoom, we all love to hate Zoom, but it really has made our world a much smaller place. And so our board of directors for the new DBSA Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter consists of officers from all of the current chapters that dissolved. So happy ending. David, what is your new position on Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter, please?
I am the president of the regional chapter.
Yes. And Jean, you are the,
Treasurer.
and Larry is the secretary. We are the chapter, to set up this chapter, unlike what you might have done with your own chapter, I was not involved in the setup of all the chapters that are across the country, except to collect the paperwork. But because this was our first regional chapter, and this was brand new approach for us, I actually met with all of the chapter leaders on a monthly basis to start going through, how are we going to form this? What do we need to do? What are our policies? What are our procedures? And so what we did is we started first with getting the new chapter incorporated in Illinois. And of course, to have that, we had to have named officers. The next approach was where we could open up a checking account and allow people to be able to see the banking information, because a treasurer has to be audited on a regular basis. At your at your chapter's board meetings, your chapter treasurer should be giving you a accounting of how much money has come in, how much money has gone out. And someone on the board, or if your chapter appoints an auditor type person, should also be comparing what the treasurer says to what the bank statement says for your books. We use the Dbsa resources for chapters and state organizations page to write bylaws, policies, and procedures. And Jean, I think you and David both had a lot of editing to do. And then what did you do next?
We came up with what we thought the bylaws should be, and then the support group policies, so that we could determine how this new regional organization would be led, the leadership of this new organization. And so we came up with language that we thought would be the best language to have, and that was to have a representative from each of the support groups on the board of directors, so that we could hear from each representative how each support group was doing, because we had a support group in Idaho, support group, and 2 support groups in Washington. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, we had 2 support groups in Idaho at one time. So we needed to have that information coming from the support groups. We also, I don't know if you want me to go into this right now, but we had to come up with shared responsibilities, because this is a new organization, and we had to determine, David was going to be president, I was going to be treasurer, and Larry was going to be secretary. And there were some other positions that that I sort of filled. One was a facilitator training coordinator. So we, getting back to the paperwork, so we had a meeting, so we sent out the bylaws and the support group policies, and then we talked about it or approved it at the next board meeting that we had.
That's right. And Jean, the important thing about having each of the representatives from the support groups on the board meetings regularly is that it also provided a way for people to witness what it means to be an officer. What's the role? And so that's part of that S word, that sustainability that we want to see in a chapter. David, I know that at the first meeting, and I don't mean to keep putting you on the spot, but I'm going to keep picking on you just because I like you. But do you remember at the first meeting when these tasks were starting to get divided up amongst the various officers that were present? Do you remember what you said? Do you remember how you felt?
Oh, yes. I felt like I wasn't alone anymore in trying to run a chapter. like at that point, Sue was on board with helping with the support group, and she was doing a great job. But I was trying to balance all the things of the officer
Mhm.
in charge, and so yeah, it was a great relief.
And I think I recall you said something, you kind of laughed to yourself and you said, this is how it's supposed to be. And you started laughing and Jean promptly reminded you, yeah, this is how it is supposed to be. I don't know if you two remember that or not, but I do. So,
Yeah.
while all of the new chapter was developing, each of the former chapters support groups continued to meet and provide services for peers. The most important aspect of any DBSA organization is that the support groups continue to do their jobs. Let's talk a little bit about what are the benefits of having this new larger chapter. Does the new organization have to still do all their own paperwork? Drum roll. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Jean. Go talk. Please talk.
Okay. Am I supposed to cover this? Yeah, there's only one set of paperwork. And we already mentioned that a rep is sent to the board of directors meetings. We don't have any support groups. You notice how I said we? We don't have any support groups in Montana or Wyoming
yet.
And I am looking, and I am hoping that the board of directors would be willing to have me start a support group for Wyoming and Montana on Zoom once a month to get something going there. Don't know, because we want to, we have these states that we want to get support groups in.
Yes.
And we had our first all facilitator meeting September 17th for all of Washington, Idaho, all of the facilitators that are in the region. And it was great. We answered a lot of questions. I was able to tell them about training because I'm involved in the national training, which is a point I would like to bring up, is that one of the things that happened, and I don't know as I really anticipated this, but because of David, Larry, and I and Carol coming together as leaders, we were able to combine our energy and our expertise. Like, for example, David is a whiz with websites. So he created a website for the new regional organization. My background is training. So as I said, I'm very active in facilitator training. So I was able to bring training information to the facilitators in Washington and Idaho. And outreach. Larry from Whatcom County has a great brochure that he created some years ago that we're going to use to promote the regional organization. So as you can see, we combined our energies and our expertise to have a dynamite board of directors, which we're hoping that the representatives that join us on the board of directors will see that we have a lot of energy and good leadership.
And I'm going to remind both Jean and David, since Larry is not here, Larry had reported to us how he, as a conduit for Whatcom, or the former Whatcom County chapter in Washington, he was talking to his facilitators and about this new chapter, and a lot of them got very excited and really wants, they told Larry that they do want to participate on this new regional chapter because it's such a broad area and so much exposure. They thought it was very exciting to see what's going to happen. It's one thing to, and please know, we are not bashing any of the chapters that are out there by any means. And no, we are not going to come to your local chapter and say, hey, we're shutting you down, join this group. That's not our point. What we are doing is we were providing chapters that are struggling out there with a different status. But anyways, these young people that Larry are working with, they want to be part of the board. And so he's going to bring them along as directors because they want a piece of the pie. All right, we're at the question point and the discussion point. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Lots of folks on. And if you have questions, please raise your hand and we'll try to get to you as soon as possible. What's some questions that you may have out there?
It might be helpful if you raise your digital hand because
Yes.
there are so many of you.
Oh,
Wow, we must have covered everything.
Wow.
Sue,
Oh,
Sue
there
has a
we go.
question.
How
Sue has a
long
question?
is, yes, how long is the term of service of the officers on the new chapter?
Do you want me to answer?
Sure.
Sure. You know what, Sue, because it's a new chapter and they're trying to get everything together and get the board set up, they made 2-year terms according to their bylaws because they want to provide some stability.
I see your hand, Ginny, but I think Thomas had his hand up first.
Yeah, I was just curious how we might go about, if we're getting support from a chapter that appears to be struggling, how we might be able to encourage them to look into doing this same type of thing.
Well, in California, you do have a state organization. And initially, California, the state organization that is, said, oh, no, you are not going to attach any support groups to us, Jill. And I said, whoa, no, wait a minute, and let's talk. And so the state organization that is, has started to rethink how it can provide support. So I would direct your questions to Jeff Fox. He is the president there, or his cohort there is Paul Simmons. And if your chapter is struggling, let them know that you're looking for some assistance, some guidance, because it might not be even a question that you dissolve your chapter and join California, but maybe there's something that they can do to help strengthen you guys, and figure things out. It's okay to ask for assistance. DBSA West Virginia, state organization that is, supports all of the support groups in West Virginia. Because West Virginia is so financially taxed, it is and geographic barriers, weather barriers, geography with the mountains, etc. They have support groups in all their small towns. They can't get enough people together to form chapters. And so all of the groups in West Virginia are attached to the state organization. It's very powerful. And that's what sometimes is very needed. Tennessee is doing something similar as well, but we unfortunately do not have state organizations everywhere. And if you need help or introductions, hit me up after the summit, because you know where to find me and I can get you in touch with the appropriate people.
Okay. Ginny and then Eric.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. Hi there. I am the president of Rockland County Dbsa, which is in the Hudson County, Valley, just above New York City. And I want to say, it was by default, it's like somebody was saying with their head down, but no, I'm very happy to be, participating. However, I do feel quite alone. We have barely enough and as you were talking about how many members we're really supposed to have on the board, I don't even know if we have that. Because our sort of, I think 3 of our major players have retired, moved, all very, within the past year.
Yeah.
And the other people on our board are just really, not 100%. Not 100%. So, and there was total burnout, our former president, because he was doing everything. And I swore I was not going to fall into that, but I can see
Yeah.
how easy it is. And I don't want to, and it's too stressful. I mean, I recently retired,
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. And, this excites me, the concept of not being alone and maybe getting some people who are like stronger with the leadership. So it's not just me, pretty much, because that's what I feel it is, that I'm, responsible for holding this up. And frankly, we tried hybrid, we were doing well on Zoom, then everybody was, lobbying for no Zoom. And now we have this much smaller group. We're all confused. So we need something, and perhaps it's that discussion with Jeff Becker, or
No, not for you in New York. That's a California only.
oh, okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, but we'll have to look at it because we hear you. We understand you all, none of you joined our organization to be chapter officers, or how many by raise of electronic hand joined to become president? Wait a minute, people, I don't see those hands.
Eric's hand is up. But I think it's an old hand.
Okay. It's a good to have humor at this point, right? But we understand, and guess what? The council understands too. Please be patient with us. It is a slow process because we have to be very careful how we do things. And, we don't want to trample anyone's rights. If your chapter's swinging hard and doing really well, great, we'll support you too. We're not going to touch you. But if you're exhausted and you don't have a good supporting cast, we got to help you some way. And so give us a little time. Unfortunately, New York State organization didn't work out, but that's not to say that it won't, or another chapter can't help. Maybe it's a Northeast chapter or regional group that we get together, a combo of maybe or a tri-state. I used to love seeing the tri-state, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Something like that might be helpful. So again, if you can hold on, please do. We're here to help and here to support you guys.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And one thing I would like to add is that the new regional organization is allowing David to give him additional energy, freeing up energy so that he can focus on his support group, and Larry can focus on his support group, and Carol can focus on her support group in Idaho. Because that's really the most important thing, right?
That's great.
To keep our support groups going.
Yes.
And Jean, I think a really cool thing that we didn't mention was now that David created that cool Pacific Northwest regional chapter, and you can all check it out after the summit, not during summit, mind you, but after the summit, where there was nothing in Wyoming, Montana, and Alaska, there is now the Pacific Northwest regional chapter. When you go to a page and you see a chapter, you say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to contact these people because there's something there. Before, they would just sign on to that page and it would be blank, no chapters in your area. Wow, what a bummer. What a drag.
Yeah.
Someone who's struggling, who wants to find help, and they say, oh, great, there's nothing in my state. I think about the folks in the Dakotas, in Minnesota, Kansas, wherever the case may be, where there isn't a mention of a organization. It's hard to even imagine one. So now with Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter being there, it's exciting. Sorry, not mean to blather. I'm just talking about the bennies.
Okay, Eric, and then Michael.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for a great presentation. I'm with the DC-based National Capital Area chapter. We work with chapters our chapter includes DC and 2 counties in Maryland. And so it's somewhat regional. our board president has introduced the idea of expanding us geographically. I acknowledge I have been reluctant among the board leadership to do that. I know your experience in the Northwest is new, so you may not really be able to address my question, but the issue really is how do you maintain sort of your local awareness and focus when you are working with other support groups that are outside your immediate region, without, outside, and obviously all of the Northwest, that's a big area. I mean, not everyone's familiar with what's happening in different states and all that. So I don't know if you can, and I realize it's a difficult question I'm asking, but how do you envision reaching out into those areas that don't currently have support groups, or where you don't have the local knowledge, where you don't have the local expertise to offer? Because I think that's for, and a side note, one of the challenges I'm finding with our support groups now, we're on Zoom, and Zoom has been great in many ways, but we're having lots of people showing up from the local area, and we're just not able to provide them with that locality information that sometimes they're looking for. So that's sort of, I'd be curious to know so far what your experience has been, recognizing it's brand new. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
You wanna
so
talk about that?
yeah, we haven't really gotten that far in promoting DBSA in states where no DBSA support group exists. However, I would, I'm going to propose at the next board meeting that we have, regional board meeting, that we partner with like NAMI Montana, because NAMI Montana has a number of support groups. Although there's, I think, a Tuesday night that they don't have a support group. So I was thinking that I could start a support group once a month on Tuesday night for Wyoming and Montana, and hope, and then, so that would be the idea. But then the smaller steps, I don't know, like how would we promote that group?
You would promote that group on the website, Jean?
Right.
And also, Eric, what also happens for all of the support groups that were originally attached to the chapters that dissolved, they are still there, and they can still be found at the state level. And it has the local facilitator's name and contact information on it. So when you go to Washington or Oregon, you will see Pacific Northwest Regional Chapter, but then you'll also see the separate support groups listed in that contact information. Also, as part of our DBSA national website, we also have a place where Start a Support Group happens. And I get the blips from all the people who are interested in starting support groups. And I give them the information. And once they complete my information, if it's for Montana or Oregon or National Capital, I forward that to you guys to see if you're interested in helping that support group and getting that volunteer on board. It's not only good for that potential new volunteer, but it also, I hate to say it, and remember, it's not a requirement, it's a suggestion, but all of our chapters should be opening up new support groups. And if you don't have to do the legwork on it and Jill's gonna hand you one, maybe look at it when I send it, right? I'm not being a mom, I'm just making a suggestion.
And the other thing I wanted to tap was to explore how Rural Minds might be able to help us find peers in some rural areas of Montana and Wyoming. But this is just, Eric, this is just sort of a half-baked idea. So it needs more time in the oven, and a few other bakers too. So,
but it's a great idea.
Okay.
Oh, you're just saying that, David, because we have all of these people here.
Yeah, but no.
Let David speak.
No.
Okay,
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just following up with that. I was wondering how we were going to start growing and getting our word out there that we could support people. And Jean's idea of working with NAMI is a great suggestion.
Mhm.
Michael, Carl, and then Dan, and then Mike. Michael, you're up first. You're
All right,
back.
I want to, yeah, can you hear me? You can hear
Uh-huh.
me, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so, I just wanted to toss one idea that worked for us. We have about 7 support groups spread across Southeast Florida. We were fortunate enough that none of us got waxed by Hurricane Ian.
Oh, God bless.
But as far as fundraising and being able to afford to stay in operation, sustainability also an issue there. I'm the treasurer, and we put out an early appeal, basically an appeal of desperation. That, we can no longer pass they had at Zoom meetings, and so I know it's not just us that are affected. There's many AA groups in the area have had to shut down completely. They just don't have any funding. What we did was sent out a frank and honest text to a starter group of people to see how they would respond, saying basically our treasury is drained and we're going to have to dissolve by early 2023 unless we manage to scrape together some things. And what we did is time that. So we sent out the initial appeal before the end of September. And of course, we're moving into the time of year when everybody and his dog are out for fundraising. Charitable appeals are about to, especially around Thanksgiving and Christmas, become rampant. And we got in a little early, and although we're still going to have to appeal for a lowering of our chapter affiliation fees to stay in business this year, or in 2023, we do have prospect of even, we're relatively a penniless lot, and to even some people who, one guy had $16.05 in the bank, and he threw in $5. I mean, we're talking people who've really dug deep to keep the chapter functioning, and we're very appreciative that everybody coming together. We may make this an annual appeal and start like the September the 15th, and that seems to be working for us in this year. We'll see how well it goes over next year.
Sure.
But we may be back with COVID-19 to having more in-person meetings. Right now we have 1 out of 7, or 2 rather out of 7 that are meeting in person again, or it's a hybrid meeting.
Okay,
And
Michael.
one thing I real
thank
benefit.
you.
Okay, very good. Okay, go ahead.
No, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to put a little commercial in there. For all of you, please be on the lookout on the agenda, because our development department is going to be talking about fundraising. It doesn't have to be just shaking down your support group members for cash, okay? It doesn't have to be that way. There's other things that your chapter can do in order to get funds. Also, this is a secret, but as the chapter network, by process is going to take a few years, but after we get the chapter network strengthened, what we hope to do is be able to address some of these things, like how do I do finances, having more chapter chat meetings, again, topically, how do I do development activities, how do I do officer recruitment activities, how do I spoil my support group facilitators, how do I keep them fresh. We're going to be doing these things. Please be patient. Like I said, first we got to get everyone to that point where it is sustainable. But it is coming, folks. Please know that. We care and we hear you. But thank you, Michael. Now, Jean, you told me who was next?
Carl, and then Dan, and then Mike.
Okay, Carl, from Delco, PA chapter. I guess it's a kind of quick question. I am a facilitator. I'm not doing a whole lot this month because of the seminar, and also because I'm doing some other stuff with another volunteer I do with Penn State Extension. But My question is, I guess, is as a facilitator in Pennsylvania, can I loan myself out to other groups throughout the country if they need someone? I mean, is there a database that might be, or something that, or are we kind of like restricted to, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, no. Yes, I understand.
Which is it, Jill? Yes, no, which is it?
Hey, he asked me a question that was a little more difficult, so yes, you are not confined to your Pennsylvania borders. With Zoom, you can go anywhere. We respectfully request that if you're going to be a facilitator at large, that you have recently undergone training, DBSA's facilitator training, because we don't need it to be a perfect carbon copy support group to support group. But basically, if I'm in Chicago with Bridget in Greater Chicago, she's going to do a welcome statement. She's going to read maybe the guidelines. They're going to do a check-in. Then they're going to do the deeper dive, etc. We don't want to have it where we just, and then have wellness, then have a closing activity. And since I've done training so much, I can just rattle this off in my brain, but not every facilitator out there can. And there are different models. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly carbon copy, but you understand what I'm saying. And
Yeah,
so-
I did go through the training, I think last year, or it was this year. And certainly would be welcome to go through the training again, just
Well,
to.
no need.
Oh, no? Okay. Well,
Not if you've been in it for a couple of years.
yeah.
Yeah, Carl, I would really be interested in your email address in the chat.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
No problem.
Oh,
Thank you.
by
Thank
the
you for
way,
taking my,
everyone,
thanks.
Jean is our lead support group facilitator trainer, so be careful who you volunteer for. Jean will use you. Who's next, Jean?
Dan and then Mike.
Hi, guys. I am from Southern California in Orange County,
Mhm.
and I'm brand new to all of this. So,
Welcome.
We're
We're glad for it.
correct me if I'm doing any of this wrong, but from what I'm hearing, I do not want to start a chapter. That just sounds like way too much. But I would love to start a weekly support group. So I happen to be a director for a mental health treatment center, and we would love someplace for our clients to go weekly, to meet in a safe space, for it to specifically be mental health. DBSA sounds great, and probably mostly Zoom, but maybe a hybrid. How do I do that? And I'm not trained in any way whatsoever. I'm brand new to all of this.
Well, don't worry about that. We'll get you trained. But the first thing I would ask you to do is to try to find your nearest local chapter.
Okay.
And if you can attend, are you also a peer, or are you a friend?
Yes.
You're
No,
a peer.
I am also a peer. Yes.
Great. So then what I'd like you to do is get connected with the local chapter.
Okay.
Attend some of their support group meetings if they have them via Zoom.
Okay.
Start to get to know the players. See who's facilitating, try to find, and if you need to find out the officers for the parent chapter, please just email me and I'll happy to get you that information. Then You're going to let them know that you're interested in becoming a support group facilitator, excuse me, or that you are interested in starting your own group locally. And that's how, you can go from the inside instead of going from the outside in, go from the inside out. That might be easier for folks, because I don't know, unless anyone can raise their hand and say, Jill, you're so wrong. I don't think that any chapter officer here would say, oh, no, we're not interested in anyone volunteering. Let's see those hands. Anyone not interested? Hello? Yeah, no. So that's how I think you can do that a little bit more easily. And then what happens is the chapter leadership might say to you, hey, we'd love for you to attend our support group facilitator training or nationals. Please know, and if everyone's hearing me, please know that we provide facilitator training as a service to help chapters. It's not just our way or the highway. Some chapters out there have their own training programs that are excellent, and we don't say anything against. Okay, so everyone gives me the proverbial nod that they heard what I just said. I'd appreciate that. But again, it really depends on that. And so, like I said, get connected. If you can't find your local chapter, let me know and we'll find you one so that you can
Okay.
at least start, even if it's not really local, I'll get you in somewhere that you can at least attend some meetings.
No, I think we have one local. I think it's like even like South Orange County, which is where we are. I think we have one
Excellent.
local. And I think I would probably I've got numerous alumni who I think would like to be involved and would love to be like a facilitator, you know? And so maybe I could get even 2 or 3 people facilitator trained.
That's good because we have a couple West Coast trainers. Jean, I don't think Laura's on the call either on the meeting right now, but Laura is from Orange County, so at least she's in your general area.
Yes.
And Jean is at
absolutely.
least Pacific Coast time too. So we could probably start some good trouble.
Oh, they're great.
Next questions, Jean.
Mike Flood.
Well, thank you. And Carl, I'm in Southern California. I'm in the real Southern California in La Jolla.
All right, you're
But
telling me the real.
But my interest in all of this is that I'm chair of the advisory council for the National Network of Depression Centers, a different organization. We're focused on research and translation of that research to clinical practice and anti-stigmatization efforts. So it's 27 universities around the country, major universities that have banded together. And we are a resource that you may not know of.
Well, we'd
We
like
have,
to know
of course,
more.
large campuses where we have lots of buildings,
Mhm.
meeting facilities, places where you're not necessarily identified as someone with a mood disorder when you show up.
Mhm.
And so if meeting places are a problem, you can certainly look at our website and see what the member institutions are, and there are contacts, and I'm the best person to start with on that. And there's no charge for any of that.
Oh, Mike, that's generous. That's really great because a
Let's
lot
make sure
of
that we make use of that. And
Yeah.
then secondly,
Mhm.
just in general, there is enough overlap, and Michael Pollack and I had a short conversation about this at a recent meeting. There's enough overlap between what we're trying to do, but with different perspectives. Ours on research and how to make it better and more impactful. Yours on more patient and family facing activities. And I think that those two things work very well together. So I'm making sure that everyone on this call, and if you want to spread the word, that's fine, that the Advisory Council for the National Network of Depression Centers is one of the places where we sort of bring those things together.
And I wrote some
Thank you for
notes
letting me
down.
sit in on this.
Oh, no, thank you, Mike. The thing is, unfortunately, some of our California chapters, and I don't know if this is happening to all of them, but now that they are trying to transition back to their regular church basements kind of thing, COVID taught churches and other organizations really well about things called liability. And if someone gets sick, so they're now asking our chapters, either to provide liability, officer D&O insurance, and or let's see, what was the other one? Oh yeah, pay for their meeting spaces when most of our support groups do not have 2 nickels to rub together, which they shouldn't. But that is a great offer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And like I said, I made note of that, and I can find you in the registration database. So I don't even need you to send me your email. And so I will let our Southern California chapters, be careful for what you wish for, but I will let them
And that's
know
all
that
across the
too.
country. That's all across the country.
Oh, it's
and
all
even
across the
overseas.
country.
Yes.
Oh,
And the resource that you might have more use for are qualified research and clinician people that would be happy to speak on any topic. You find the person that you're interested in who's on one of our campuses, and we'll make it happen.
are you all writing that down?
It'll
case
be
you
in the
need
notes.
Meeting spaces or free speakers, writing it down, right? NNDC, Advisory Council, or hit Jill up. Jean.
Okay,
Thank you, Mike.
so do I need more caffeine, or did I dream, Stephen, that you had your hand up before and then it went down?
It wasn't a dream. My question was answered. And then I got a new one.
Oh, okay.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Sure. So I was curious if I've been you know, a member of a support group that's used to be a chapter or subsidiary of Overland Park chapter in you know, outside of Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri, for a while now. And I was curious if there was going to be, with this kind of additional sort of support behind transitioning people to support groups who, for whom it's appropriate going forward, if there was going to be any more communication about what the responsibilities are between a chapter and its support groups and vice versa, what the expectations might be there, and then maybe even more specifically, how fundraising can work and how those donations could be shared between a support group and a chapter that might not be close by, sort of a thing. I was curious if that was still something in the works, or if there were any answers on that yet.
There is some information on the resources for chapters and state organizations page in the bylaws, policies, and procedure templates that are available for chapters to download, edit, and make their own. It really depends, and I know that this sounds bad, and we're not washing our hands of this, but please know that every single chapter out there, you are your own bosses with that, and how you want to treat your support groups and vice versa. We make recommendations. We hope you adhere to them, but a support group, bar none, does not have any legal ability to collect funds except to funnel them up to the chapter. The support group does not have an employer identification number. It is nonprofit, yes, but only as its association to its parent chapter. But yes, more things are coming. But like I said, we have to start somewhere. And first, it's shoring up our network. And then, like I said, I can intersperse, if any of you notice who have attended the chapter chats, I've kind of made it content driven this year. Instead of talking about Zoom, we've moved on to, we had a DEI session. We also had the sustainability series with Mike Cool, who's a current board member, our former president, and he did a session, and then we did support groups and with Jean and crew. And so yes, we're going to continue to do that content driven information.
Jill, maybe we could use a couple of minutes because we go till 1:15, is that right?
That's correct.
Or, my time.
15 past the hour.
Yeah, okay. So maybe if you could walk through the steps that a chapter who would like to become a support group, what steps they need to take, or what would be a good, what would be some steps that they would take to do that?
Sure. The first thing that you would do, let's pretend you're the board president and you're saying, I'm tired. My officers are tired. You want to have a board meeting and you want to just speak truth to each other and say, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to buddy up with another chapter and find out how they're recruiting members and how they're continuing, to thrive and drive, etc.? If you want to do that, then we'll try to find you a CAT team, that's a chapter advancement team partner, to help coach you to strengthen your chapter. Or do you want to become a support group of another chapter? And with that being said, if you'd like to do that, contact me directly, and then we'll start looking for that parent chapter. Once we find the parent chapter, we're going to have a meeting between both parties just to go over what are the ground rules, what are the expectations. And if everyone is like-minded after that, then we start those steps that we talked about earlier in the presentation. That is, first of all, to send a dissolution notice, and that dissolves the chapter incorporation. The next is to submit a final financial report. That's what I use to close out the employer identification, or EIN number. That's like, and for those of you, if I'm speaking Greek, then that is like the social security number for your organization that the IRS tracks you with. Then we remove you from the chapter listing as a chapter, but then we change you to say support group instead of chapter after that. We want to make sure that as long as this is happening, however, Number one, what's the thing that must continue to go on? Anyone? I know it's late in the afternoon and I've been yammering so much. Ginny? I think you might be muted.
The support group?
The support groups meet and continue to meet and provide services. Yes, exactly. Because we don't want our peers to suffer while we're figuring out. It's kind of like keep your dirty laundry on your own side of the laundromat, you know?
Yes, yes.
It's our number one priority,
It
right?
is. Supporting peers. That is the most important. More questions?
That was a very good answer, Jill.
Oh, thank you, Jane.
I saw
pay
a
you
number of people taking notes.
I'll pay you later. I know it's a
I'll just
lot.
add it to your bill.
Thanks. It is a lot to take in, folks, and it can be overwhelming. Please know, Jean and David or Larry would tell you, this did not happen overnight. We started our journey together back, well, David and I, for years, we've been having conversations because I'm happy to help all of you, but the dissolution process started in January. And although we affiliated or incorporated the chapter.
Uh-oh.
Lost you, Jill.
She said that she hasn't been getting very good sleep.
Well,
Do you
yes,
know how that was going to end, David?
I believe it was that, of course, the dissolution of the chapter started in January, and then we started meeting, I believe, in March, and we met every month for a while, and like 3 or 4 months, and then we've spread that out to every couple of months with different topics that we need to discuss as they come up. Yeah, it's not been overnight by any means. And Jill is amazingly supportive. I'm sure you all are aware, but I felt really bad going to her with my news of how this was all going, and she was just so supportive. Don't be afraid.
Carla, hello.
Hi.
Would you like to add
I've been
anything?
here the whole time, but when Jill fell
Really?
off, I thought I'd step in. Yeah. So yes, Jill is always all of your advocate, and she is here, you know, just doing the very best that she can for all of you, and representing, you know, what needs to happen. So I'm here if you need me.
Great.
And there are peers on the CAT team that are can help as well.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what the CATs are, it stands for Chapter Advancement Team Members, and it's a group of peer leaders, you know, who have volunteered to be a helping hand to chapters that are struggling. And so they help with everything from just tips on how they've handled similar situations to how to get bylaws done, or how to, I mean, you name it, and pretty much we've handled some aspect of it with the CATs. And again, a wonderful resource, and Jean is part of that group as well. And then when you go to facilitator training, the facilitator trainers are also a great resource, and able to answer many of those questions. How you contact a member of the CAT is just contact Jill or myself, or just send it to chapters@DBS Alliance, and then we all get it. And we will get back to you. And it would be helpful if you could to just tell us what kind of assistance you're looking for, because then we can communicate those needs to the cats and get the appropriate person to help you with the appropriate problem. Because we even have cats who are, you know, business leaders, and they help on the administrative side of things. So if you need something administrative, maybe that's the right person. We just want to match people who have expertise with the need that you have. You're welcome. I saw thanks very much in the chat.
So should we let these people go? Should we?
I think they can get 2 minutes back, 2 hot minutes.
Okay, so thank you, all 41 of you who have been here at some time. And thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest. And thank you for supporting peers.
Yes.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Jill, for everything.
Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of the summit.
Yes. Do take care.